Welcome. Here we all are. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I'm Lissa Gibbs, and I am the director for the Festival Napa Valley's education program. And we are so excited to have you with us today for this virtual field trip. And we hope you've had a chance to watch the pre-recorded Novack Concert for Kids concert with Sphinx on Festival Napa Valley's YouTube channel. That is, I think, up in our comments there to remind you that it's a great way to watch what we're going to learn more about with our two musicians today. I'm going to introduce them, but first I want to give a gigantic thank you to all the teachers and parents and schools who've been doing such a heroic job to keep everyone's learning interesting and engaging during this pandemic period and online everything. So thank you once again for joining us on this little screen. A very special thank you to the Novack family and to the Festival Napa Valley Board of Directors for their support of our education programs for families and youth. We couldn't do this without them. Sphinx Virtuosi is part of the Sphinx organization, which is based in Detroit, and is an amazing organization dedicated to transforming lives through the power of diversity in the arts. And we've got two members of the Sphinx Virtuosi, their performing body, here with us today. I will put their names back up there so you can see them. We've got Alex Gonzalez and Erica Snowden-Rodriguez. Alex, you're a violinist, and Erica, you're a cellist. If we could just sort of kick things off by asking, where are you two right now? And we'd love it if anybody who's watching, if you can tell us in our chat, the live chat, where you're tuning in from. We know that we've got some folks in Sonoma, we've got some folks in Napa, I think we've got some folks in San Carlos in the greater Bay Area. But let us know where you're tuning in from, because we'd love to know where we're reaching. Erica, where are you today?
I'm broadcasting from Akron, Ohio.
Woohoo, Ohio. What's the weather like?
Actually, it's really nice today, believe it or not. It's almost 55 degrees, which is kind of weird for this time of year. We had a bunch of snow that is now melting as we speak. So, yeah, I got a little bit of vitamin D this morning, which was nice.
When it's that cold and snowy, do your fingers feel it when you're playing your instrument? Is it harder?
Oh, boy. Well, yes. Absolutely. Yeah. I really have to make sure when I'm coming from my car to the rehearsal space or wherever I'm going, I really have to make sure I warm up my hands nice and good before I start.
You ever wear gloves, either one of you, when you're playing? Alex, how about you?
I don't. If fingerless gloves maybe, but I can't really move around. But I'm calling in from Las Vegas, Nevada, so it's in the low 70s, so it's pretty nice. So I'm sorry, Erica, but yeah, that's where I'm calling in.
So tell us a little bit more about what Sphinx is and what the Sphinx Virtuosi as an ensemble is, and how you came to be part of it, because it's a very unique organization. It's important for anyone tuning in today to know that there is a possibility to be involved with you all. Alex, could you talk a little bit about how you got involved with Sphinx? And also just, Erica, maybe you could tell us, what is Sphinx first?
Sure. So Sphinx is really, it kind of started as a competition, actually, a competition for string players who are Latinx or African American. And, the organization has really grown in the last, 20 plus years that it's been around. There's all sorts of educational opportunities in addition to the competition. There's a symphony orchestra that performs at the competition. There's also now a whole conference that's dedicated to diversity in the arts and in classical music. Sphinx Virtuosi is just one of many programs that has been launched by the Sphinx organization. So that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. How did you get involved with it? Did you go through the competition?
I did, yeah. So there's a junior division and there's also a senior division. I got involved in 2008 for the first time. I was in the senior division. I competed when I was in college. So yeah, I competed in 2008 and then also again in 2011.
So how about you, Alex? How did you get involved with Sphinx?
Yeah, very similar to Erica. I first competed in the competition in the senior division when I was in college. This was 2013, I believe, and 2012, sorry, and then I did it again in 2013. And after a couple times in the competition, I was lucky enough to be invited to play with the Sphinx Virtuosi. Actually, the first time I ever played with Sphinx was in Napa Valley at the festival out there, like many summers ago. That was my first ever time, and after that, I've played with them since 2015-ish. Yeah, and like Erica said, we both got involved through the competition, but there are many other avenues. There is the conference, which has a fellowship for, college aged and high school age students to come experience it for free. There's the Sphinx Performance Academy, which is for pre-college students, a summer program, very intensive solo chamber music program, which is also free if I'm not mistaken. Erica can correct me on that, but yeah, there's many avenues, but we both entered through the competition.
So most of your programs are for free. That's probably a pretty important thing, that access of not having to worry about paying tuition or anything like that. Do you have to apply for it? And are there deadlines for it? Do you have to sort of plan for it?
Yes, there are deadlines for all of these things. I know that all the information is on the Sphinx organization's website. You can find Sphinx Performance Academy, Sphinx Connect. Of course, everything's been a little different this year for everybody, so it's been I'm not sure of deadlines now, but usually it's a summer program and stuff, so usually spring-ish is the application time.
Why is it called Sphinx? What's with that name? That was a question that we got in advance. So what is a Sphinx and why is it called Sphinx? Any ideas about that?
I don't know an official answer. Do you know an official answer, Erica?
I do not. I actually have no idea where they got the name Sphinx from. So that's a question I think probably for Afa.
Yeah.
Afa's the executive director and the founder. Yeah. So the access to it is pretty accessible. What would your advice be to someone if they wanted to become involved with you and maybe be part of the organization and then maybe lead to being invited to be part of the Virtuosi?
Mm-hmm.
My advice, I guess, just, of course, it's always helpful to have a teacher, a music teacher that can kind of help to guide you if you're able to have that. But, if not, just look up the website and see what you can get involved in. And, of course, all of us who have, done the competition and have worked at our instruments for hundreds of thousands of hours probably by this point. So it takes a lot of dedication and to learn any skill, of course. But, the thing about music is there's a big return. You put in a lot of work. But, so many of my favorite and most cherished memories are really from playing music and especially being involved with Sphinx. I think it's been a really amazing opportunity. So a lot of hard work and, just dedication.
So that was one of the questions. We got a bunch of questions from the 5th grade class at Priestwood Elementary in Sonoma. And one of the questions that one of the students asked is, is this your job? Do you get paid for this? Or is this just something you do for fun? And maybe it's both. If you could maybe talk about that a little bit. What does it mean to be a professional musician, that this is the way you earn your living?
Sure. Yeah. It is our job. And we do get paid, which is good because, everyone's got to make a living. So, I mean, it is also something that we love, and I think that that's really unique and special. Not everybody necessarily loves their job, but when you're a musician, it's like, I feel like it's kind of at the heart of everything that you just love the music so much you couldn't imagine your life without it. And so you work really hard and figure out, okay, how am I going to make this work for me so that I can do what I love and make money doing it, which is key.
Alex, did you ever imagine that you would be a professional musician? Was that something that you had in your mind, and how old were you when you thought, yeah, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do as my job in life?
Yeah, this might be a strange answer, but the answer to your first question is yes, I did imagine being a professional musician because I was a very single-minded type of kid. If I liked something or was into something, there was nothing else. It could be as trivial as a cartoon or that I loved, or a favorite food, or a career. It was very specific. Now, that being said, I had no clue what that meant. I just knew that I wanted to have music be my life, but I didn't know at all what that meant because my family is not musical. Extended family is not, so it's very kind of a very random interest of mine in the out of the whole family. So, but
so how old were you when you had that idea?
I'll say I was about 7 years old when I started asking for violin lessons. But kids are very fickle, and my parents know that, so they made me wait a few years, which is good because they were like, if you keep asking for a consistent amount of time, we know you're serious, so we will. So I actually didn't start the violin specifically until I was 11 years old. So quite a bit later or older than most kids. There's the stories of kids starting when they're 3, 4, 5 years old. But since I was able to make that decision in a very conscious way, a little bit older, I knew from my first lesson that I wanted to commit and figure this out, So, so I was about 11. I started in my public school orchestra program, actually, just in the elective class, and then got a private teacher, went to a performing arts high school, then to college, and now I'm here. So, yeah.
So how about you, Erica? When did you think about, oh, this is going to be what I do as my job, my profession as a musician? How old were you, and what was that path?
Well, I actually do come from kind of a musical family. My father plays the French horn. He's retired from playing French horn, but he played in the Buffalo Philharmonic, which is my hometown. Buffalo, New York. Yep. Mm-hmm. So even snowier than Akron. So I kind of, I had a kind of a musical upbringing. And I started playing the cello when I was 7. But I didn't really know. I mean, I always loved it, but I don't think it was until high school that I realized that this was it. This is going to be my thing, And I remember actually I was in my high school orchestra, and we went on a tour. We went on a trip to Boston, Massachusetts, and we got to see the Boston Symphony perform. And it was in that moment at the end of the concert, I just remember I had tears going down my face because I was just so moved by what I had just witnessed, and I was like, I got to do this. This is my thing right here. So yeah, that was kind of the moment for me. I think I was probably a freshman in high school, ninth grade or maybe 10th grade.
So one of the other questions that we've gotten was, what inspired you to play this kind of music? Why classical music? And, maybe when you thought, oh, I want to be a professional musician, that's going to be my job, you thought about being, a rock star or a pop star or world music star. Why classical music? What draws you to it, and how it's played, and what makes it special? That was from Priestwood as well, someone in 5th grade class.
Yeah.
Either one of you want to take that?
I can start. I guess. Yeah, that's a really fantastic question. I'm not sure I've ever been asked that in that way before, to be honest. I'll say I think it might be a little bit rare, but for me, I was drawn to classical music specifically. I never, from the beginning, I of course love and still love, pop music, rock music. I love all types of music. Just good is good, cross genre, But I think
do you listen to other kinds of music and play other kind of music other than classical?
I don't play, but I really listen to a lot of. I don't listen to exclusively classical at all. Actually, I think it's very important to diversify because you learn a lot from any great art, no matter what it is. I listen to a lot of different music. I know Erica does as well. So but I lost my train of thought. Oh, classical. Why do we play? I think in hindsight, I can answer the question of why classical, maybe as I'm older and more conscious of why was I attracted to this in the first place. For me, something that I really love about it is honestly that it's just sound. There aren't really, well, there's opera and everything, but there aren't words. And so there's a lot of universality that just, you don't really have to know anything about it. You don't have to be super educated. It's about, the art form. It's just very raw and direct emotion that is not, it's very free and very direct for me. And I remember as a kid just listening to lots of CDs. Back in the days when we didn't have Spotify or YouTube, I would go to the library and check out CDs and listen to music, and was just really taken by the sound and without really knowing anything at all about what it was. So I think there's something very direct about it that just translates to each person immediately.
One of the things that is very particular about a lot of classical music is that you play with other people. And you play in an ensemble or quartet, an orchestra. And, when you're playing, and anyone who's done any kind of team sports, played soccer, basketball, knows that you have to do a lot of communicating. And one of the other questions that we had is, what languages do you speak when you're performing with each other? And maybe even say something about the language of music. How do you guys communicate with each other when you are performing together? And that's particular to classical music.
I'll take that. So you kind of learn through playing with each other how to kind of read each other without using words, So a lot of times, as you've seen with Sphinx Virtuosi, we don't have a conductor. We don't have any one person that's kind of our leader. We're kind of all leaders together at the same time. So really, I think, we use our eyes a lot, actually, to communicate with each other, and I think you'll see in some of the videos that you guys have that a lot of us, while we play, we're actually not looking at the music, but we're looking at each other. And, we'll do kind of like some, head motions or certain body language, basically.
That's a little bit like a dance almost, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And so, while we play, by the time we're in a performance mode, we know the music so well, we almost don't need it in front of us. It's kind of there as a safety net, but we're up, where our heads are up and looking around and, watching for each other, because even though, the music is written out and everything, there's kind of a game plan, there's still room for interpretation and for some spontaneity that, that we need to have our eyes up to communicate that with each other. So it really is a body language that we use a lot.
Because one of the students in Mr. Niedhofer's third grade class at Shear Elementary School from Napa, they've noticed as a class at the end of the Dvorak piece in the pre-recorded concert that they've watched, we noticed you all lifted your bows very dramatically and all at the same time. How do you do that? And is there a reason for that?
Yeah. There is, it's so funny because I tell my students this, it's kind of like, I like to make a lot of comparisons to sports, actually. I actually played sports growing up too, and I feel like a lot of people do, a lot of kids do.
What did you play?
Believe it or not, ice hockey.
Right. Well, that takes a lot of coordination. Do you ever feel like when you're in the Sphinx ensemble that maybe the Sphinx Virtuosi are actually an ice hockey team? Is that really kind of like what goes on? Yeah. You have to talk over an hour. Yeah.
To some extent, yeah.
Alex is like,
No, it is. It really is. It's like that. And especially tennis is something I think of a lot too. You have to be open to receive, but you also have to predict the move someone else is going to do, that you're, you know, that your play, whoever you're playing with. I often make a lot of eye contact with Erica. She can say that I've made a lot of crazy faces at her in rehearsals, but it really helps to translate.
So getting back to the big bow, what's that about?
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Erica.
So what I was going to say was, and I tell my students this too, you know, when you're going to swing a baseball bat or a tennis racket or anything, there's kind of a follow through that happens, right? After you hit the ball or the puck or whatever it is. And that actually affects how far the object you're hitting goes. So we don't just do this dramatic bow thing for looks, you know, yeah, it looks cool for sure, but it actually changes the sound. It actually, you know, the physics of it, you know, when you really pull the bow off the string, it's going to go further than if you just stopped. Right. Yeah, totally.
A megaphone with your bow. Yeah. How do you do it? Do you have to practice?
Oh yeah. I mean, no doubt. No doubt. We always have to practice. Yeah.
So speaking of that, and we all know this happens a lot in many things in life, and it's actually a really important part of learning anything and practicing bravery. What happens during a performance when you make a mistake? That does happen, right? What do you do? And is it important to be perfect when you're doing a performance, or do interesting things sometimes come out of the mistakes that happen in a performance? So let's talk about mistakes. Are mistakes part of what you do? You prepare not to make them, but we know they happen. What do you do?
Yeah, I can start with that a little bit. First of all, I don't believe perfection exists at all. We go to the concert hall to hear a human being, not a robot, you know, so we want to hear the human, and humans are far from perfect. So I think that mistakes are part of the human experience, so we can't and should not shy away from that. When something goes wrong in a concert, you know, I think that the number one thing is to make sure that you keep the big picture in mind. One small error does not destroy the entire the entire product. You know what I mean? There's a larger one bad grade on a test in your whole year does not tank your entire grade. You know what I mean? You can still get an A and have some tricky moments here and there. You know what I mean? So I think it's important to keep the big picture in mind, and also to know that those mistakes are part of being human, and that's the point of art in the first place. So it's not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. And when you're learning something for the first time, right? Whether you're just learning an instrument for the first time or a new piece for the first time, you're gonna want to make mistakes, right? So that you can learn. You know, talk about that a little bit, Erica.
Oh yeah, sure. I love my mistakes because they're an opportunity for me to learn. And you know, I think one of the things that I've really learned to do with my mistakes is actually to find some joy in them and to almost kind of laugh at them a little bit, because I definitely spent a lot of my musical career being terrified of making mistakes. But honestly, that mentality never really helped me. You know, mistakes are part of learning. You know, I mean, you can't just expect to pick up an instrument and suddenly, you know, pick up a cello and suddenly be Yo-Yo Ma, or like, you know, it takes time, and you learn, and you know, sometimes you stumble, and those are the moments that you can say, oh, okay, this is maybe something I need to work on. This is a skill that I haven't practiced enough, that I'm realizing now through this mistake that I can put a little bit, you know, more into that skill, whatever that is, you know, whether it's the bow off the string thing, or, you know, any of that. So I love my mistakes because they help me to get better, actually.
To get stronger. Well, that was actually a couple of students asked questions of, you know, how do you play so smoothly? Is that practice?
I think so, yeah. Practice and trial and error.
When you were in elementary school and middle school, how many hours a day did you practice your instrument? And you can be honest. You can be honest.
We might have to say how many minutes, not hours. For that
Did you do it every day, or did you do you think it's important to practice every day, even if it's just for a couple minutes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of like, you know, I always thought of, you know, if you go to a doctor and a doctor gives you a prescription and says, take one of these every day for 7 days. If you wait till the 7th day and take all 7 of those medications, it's not going to have the same effect. It's a daily practice that really helps you to grow and get better. It's
grow as a musician and as a person too, right? You know,
absolutely.
Like, you stick with your instrument for a long time. We on the subject of something that you touched on a little bit, and the fact that the Sphinx Virtuosi doesn't have a conductor. The students from the Terra Linda Middle School orchestra class in San Carlos have asked, we are wondering if you could talk a little bit what it's like to play in an orchestra with no conductor. Most of us students are used to playing in an ensemble setting, but since this year is so different, the teacher hasn't been able to conduct us in over a year. So students are having an experience, but you guys deliberately do not have a conductor. Is that hard? You know, any thoughts about that? I mean, because you probably came to Sphinx having played with a conductor, either in school or in other ensembles and orchestras you were part of.
Yeah. I don't know, Erica, did you, I don't know about you, but I think both of us probably had a lot of experience playing with conductor, but also a lot of experience playing chamber music as well. I'm sure, I know Erica had a quartet in college, and I think that's a very similar experience.
So
yeah, go ahead.
That term chamber music, what does that mean?
Any small ensemble, so groups of 2, it could be a duo or an octet up to 8. Most traditionally, we have string quartets, wind quintets, the piano trio, things like that. So small, self-governed, self-rehearsed groups. I'll say it's very difficult to play without a conductor in some ways, like organizationally making decisions. But I think in the end, it's really worth it because there's a sense of freedom and spontaneity and involvement and agency that comes from everyone being all hands on deck. I don't know what Erica thinks about that.
Any thoughts about that, Erica?
Yeah. You know, playing without a conductor, I think it's a really different experience, you know, because you don't have one person that's there to tell you what to do. You know, it's kind of your own, it's a group effort. It's a team effort, you know? So it definitely is very different, but it's really fun. It's challenging in a different way. But, you know, kind of what Alex said was that I feel like everybody has more of a sense of responsibility, and you can see everybody really becomes a leader at some point, you know, in the orchestra, as opposed to you just kind of sitting back and, you know, and following. You are really helping to drive the music. And I think that makes it really fun because you get to kind of say, you know, and express your own musical ideas and things with the music, where with the conductor, you know, you're kind of being told some of those things.
Sort of the difference between having a coach on the bench and people being captains or having control of the ball at that moment. So another request that's come in, this is from a teacher. Do you have any tips for students who are missing the ensemble experience because they haven't been able to be in person school and they've been on Zoom? They all miss the social aspect of performing together. What are some things that students can do to play with each other in this period?
It's hard. It really is hard right now because of the distance, and you know, it will never, you know, nothing will really replace that experience of being together in the same room. But I will say that sometimes for me to help me, you know, keeping to move forward with my own playing and practice, I find it's really helpful to actually play with a recording sometimes. You know, you might have to put on some headphones and play along, but I find that that kind of keeps me going with this idea of being able to play with people. Because when you're just playing by yourself all the time, you kind of lose a little bit of that sense that you would get with a group of people. So I find it's kind of helpful to put a recording on, you know, say it's a piece that, you know, I'm supposed to be preparing for a recording or something down the road. You know, I'll get a recording of that piece and I'll play my part with the recording going at the same time. And that kind of helps me to make sure my antennas, my listening ears are, you know, alert. Right.
Yeah. Well, we're winding down here. I know that students have schedules to keep, and it's lunchtime for some people, and the end of the school day for others. I really want to thank you guys for joining us today. We do have more Meet the Musicians, Meet the Maker sessions coming up throughout the spring, and more information and resources can be found on Festival Napa Valley's website. All the links for all of our Novack concerts for kids for this spring are up there, but also apropos the last thing that you were talking about, we have a page dedicated to toolkits for online learning resources. The Grammy Music Education Coalition has some really great free tools for collaborating via Zoom. The delay is hard in Zoom, and I think a lot of teachers struggled with that, but there are some really great tools that a bunch of other people have figured out, and those are up on our web pages, and more of our concerts are up there. Is there any last thing that you want to share with students and teachers and families that have tuned in with us today?
I don't think so. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you for listening. Yes.
Cool. Our next live stream will be on March 25th, a Thursday at 11:30 a.m. with the creative team behind the Sound Shapes interactive music-driven video game, which you can play. Find that also on our website, and you can play for free. You can actually make your own compositions in it, and I would really encourage everyone to try that out and tune back in on our YouTube live stream in March. We do record these, and they're available afterwards, and we encourage people who can't attend our live stream. I know attend is a very broad word, but if you can't be with us live, you can also email us questions in advance so that we can ask them of the musicians. Thank you guys so much. We look forward to having you here in person again here in Napa. We know this is temporary, and we'll be all together again soon. Thank you so much, and thank you to all of you who are still keeping the music fire burning out there in the world. Don't give up. Practice, even if it's just for a minute a day. And you too can be a professional musician like these two fine human beings. Erica, Alex, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.